Okay, I'm going to do my best to get through this last context, which is business, quickly. These videos that I'm creating right here, I have a maximum of 5 minutes. So sometimes I rush quickly knowing that you can pause the video and go to the textbook. So first looking at the business context, understanding international business is important for several different reasons. It has a lot to do with different cultural rules, and your knowledge of a culture's differences of cross-cultural teamwork is essential for organizational success in today's society. And so your textbook talks about a domestic business setting, which has to do with the idea that minorities are the fastest growing segment of U.S. Demographics. And you have to be able to adapt your operations to appeal to different ethnicities with your small business. And successful management depends very much on a cultural awareness. These are actual intercultural business blunders, and some of them crack me up. You can pause these and read one. I don't know why the fourth one just kills me. It makes me laugh every single time. These are real. Thirdly, the idea of some business protocols in multicultural business context in terms of initial contacts. Whether it's in some cultures, it's very direct. You go face to face. You can knock on a stranger's office. Make a cold call. In other cultures, you have to be introduced. You have to have a letter of introduction. You have to use a middleman, and you cannot go directly to that person. In terms of greeting behavior, that has a lot to do with the notions of formality or informality, whether it's verbal or nonverbal, how much touch is involved in terms of the actual greeting. Personal appearance, what constitutes appropriateness? There are rules about giving gifts, what to give, when to give it, and how do you gift it. And there's certain taboos about discussing politics, personal information, certain jokes that are appropriate or not. Some of the key principles discussed in this, you'll see this listed here, and these are some of the things you can go to the book for detail. I won't really hit it more than this. In terms of negotiation in a multicultural business context, definitely some variations. Your book discusses Brazil, China, and India. In Brazil, they focus on the particular rather than the universal. They tend to focus more on relationships rather than tasks. They tend to be polychronic rather than monochronic, very collective rather than individual, very flexible. In China, there's different status of team members. That's important. Very indirect use of language, although they can be adaptive to Western styles of a more direct. China in general is much more collectivistic, and the fundamental view of a contract is that it's not this rigid agreement, but it just sort of it more or less establishes the parameter of a relationship rather than provisions within this this piece of paper. In India, it's very important that you establish personal relationships with those people that you're going to be negotiating. There are formal procedures that need to be followed, and it's important that you go through the steps and allow that to take place over a period of time. Also, high context in India. In terms of some more things on negotiation skills, you can look at these. These are 5 simple rules to follow. This is a different view. It's not in your textbook about culture. This comes from James Newlip. And he argues that there are 6 different aspects to organizational culture that deals specifically with the influence of culture. And you can read each one of these in more particular later on. But the idea of cultural context, that's where some of the norms, cultural norms and values we talked about earlier. The environmental context has a lot to do with things like privacy and architectural preferences and the amount of information people can take. Perceptual context has to do with how people process information. Relations, that international relations, that's obviously relationships. Verbal, nonverbal code, that's self-explanatory. Social relational context has a lot to do with collectivism and individualism. And I can't believe I got through it all. Yay.